Hey procrastinators, I'm back with another monthly collab with Delaney Jane Cards. We do this collab every month, and this month we are talking about pattern paper and 5 ways to use it. So I will be doing 5 ways on my channel, and Renee will be doing 5 ways on her channel, and I will have the link to her video in my description box below. So I'm starting off with die cutting sentiments, and I don't have a whole lot of word dies or sentiment dies, so I'm going to be using Tonic Craft Kit number 19, and unfortunately this kit is not available anymore, but you can use any sentiments or word dies that you have on hand. This is one of my favorite kits from Tonic because it has a lot of versatile sayings and sentiments, word dies, whatever you want to call it, in it. So I started off by stamping the supporting sentiments in Versamark, and I'm heat embossing it in Wow Opaque White embossing powder. And as you can see, I stamped quite a few of them. I had a different idea in mind, but I did not end up going that direction. So I'm just going to die cut the supporting sentiments here, and then I will show you the main word dies that I'll be using here in a second. So here they are, and I used the Whimsy Stamps Rainbow 6x6 pattern papers that I got in the Simon Says Stamp Card Kit, and I'm not sure if these papers are sold separately or not, but they are gorgeous and I love them. So I'm just going to pop these out real quick, and then we're going to move on. As you can see, like I said, I have quite a few pieces here, but I'm only going to make one card, and I did not end up using all the pieces. I had a totally different idea. All right, so I'm going to use some Dilutions ink spray here. I'll pop the colors up on the screen. I'm just going to splatter a bunch of colors that sort of match my rainbow pattern papers in the sentiments that I chose. And I did heat set in between each one. I didn't want the colors to merge together and create a blobby mess or muddy mess. I'm just going through the colors real quick here. I'm going to do some London blue, and I believe we're going to move on to black, and that is the last color that I splattered on. And here is the look at the whole background complete, and I'm going to mat it on a black piece of cardstock with just a 1/8 inch border around the whole piece. And then we'll be matting that onto my card base, and that'll just have a white border around the edge of that. And then I stacked these supporting sentiments on some black cardstock to give them like a chipboard finish. I didn't want to deal with little teeny tiny pieces of foam. And the main word dies are matted on black. Well, not matted, but I cut the word die, the solid word die, out of black. And then I'm going to pop those up on some foam. But first I wanted to take care of the inside of my card, because for once I remembered to do the inside before I popped the pieces on foam tape on the front of my card. And this is from the You Matter stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. All right, now we're going to put the foam pieces on. And this is just going to say, believe in yourself. And, oh geez, I forgot what it said now. Believe in yourself and, follow your dream. That's it. This is going to be one of those voiceovers, guys. My brain is fried. It's a lot of hours editing this video. But I love how that turned out. Then we're going to move on to the next technique, which is going to be ink blending on pattern paper. And I have 2 cards for this technique. Here's the final pictures. All right, now we're going to move on to the next technique. Like I said, this is going to be ink blending on the pattern paper, and I have 2 cards for this. So the first one I'm going to do on a foiled pattern paper. So those little hearts are foiled. And this is from Craft Perfect Silver Jubilee 6x6 paper pad. There's 4 different designs in that pattern paper pad, but I chose this one with the white craft and copper foiled hearts on it, or rose gold foiled hearts. I'm starting off with Salty Ocean. Now, the one thing you have to realize with ink blending on pattern papers is that pattern papers aren't typically made for ink blending, so you aren't going to get a perfect ink blend here, but just do the best you can. And so as you can see that the craft paper kind of makes my ink blending a little splotchy there, but as it dries it does get a little bit better. But again, don't expect perfection here. So I'm just going to move on to peacock feathers here, and I do lay down my ink, and then I will go back to the Salty Ocean to try to blend that out a little bit better. I'm just going to lay down the peacock feathers, and I do have my ink blending a little bit slower than I typically do, just because ink blending is the technique here. But here we go. Now we're back into the Salty Ocean. I'm just blending those two together. As you can see, I do prefer to use multiple brushes. I don't like to wipe off my brushes in between. It's just kind of a personal preference thing. Plus, because I have nerve problems in my arms, I like to avoid the movements and wiping off my brushes as much as possible. I'm already stressing them out by all this ink blending. So I'm going back and forth here. Then I'm going to move on to Wilted Violet, and I'll do the same thing. As I'm going to lay down the Wilted Violet, and then I'll go back to the peacock feathers and blend those two colors a little bit better to get a better blend. And as you can see, the rose gold hearts are resisting the ink here. And like I said, it's not going to be a perfect blend here, but you know, you're still getting a custom color combination, and you're getting more use out of your pattern paper this way, getting a custom look. I'm just going to finish up here, go back to the peacock feathers, blend that out a little bit more, and then we're done. And here's a final look at that ink blending and how shiny those hearts are. All right, now time to decorate it. So as you can see, I popped up the U in the U Matter stamp set. And if you take the backing off your foam first, you can bend it around those curves just perfectly. And I did cut this out with my scanning cut. Well, I cut the U out with my scanning cut. The Happy Birthday 2, I used the MFT slanted sentiment strip die for that. I'm just going to cut off the extra here. And then we're going to do the inside real quick. And I just used the scrap from the pattern paper to put on the inside. And I chose not to ink blend that. And I am just making sure that my card is going to fold real nice before that adheres permanently. And this is from the Birthday Word Mix 1 stamp set, stamp and die set. And of course I didn't get it completely straight. Then we're just going to use my bone folder, jeez, and make sure that it has a nice crease. And put that on there, and we are done with this card. Oh, I lie. We're going to put some DIY shimmer spray on the front of it. And that does kind of help make the blending a little bit more smooth, or hide the non-smoothness of the blending, however you want to put it. And that's the final look at that card. And we've got some pictures coming up here. And the inside. And then we're going to move on to the second card with the ink blending technique, because the first one was the copper, with the foiling on it, and this one is just a plain piece of pattern paper. So here's the paper pad that I used for this one. And then I cut a piece of that 12 by 12 off, just the section that I wanted to use. And then we're going to add a little bit of dimension or just make it look so it's not so flat, I guess, with some ink blending. So I'm starting off with Evergreen Bough. And I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do this, what colors exactly were going to work well with this. So I did go through quite a few colors to get the exact look that I wanted. I mean, I have swatches on the side of my ink pads, but it was just kind of an odd color to match with the distress range, I guess. So I started with Evergreen Bough, and you can see I'm getting kind of this color kind of matches really well with the pattern paper, so I wasn't getting a whole lot of color difference on it. So then I went in with the Lucky Clover, which is darker. And I'm like, okay, well, this is darkening it up, but it's looking very minty, which is not really the color that I was looking for. I was kind of wanting to add some color variation, have it kind of go ombre towards, darker towards the bottom and lighter towards the top. But I also wanted it to kind of have like an antique type feel. So I was like, well, this is not the way. And you could see me tapping my brush here. I'm like, this is not what I wanted. How am I going to fix this? So then I grabbed Bundled Sage, and I wanted to get rid of the mint. I wanted to add a little bit more of a greenish hue, not a minty hue, if that makes any sense. So that, well, maybe the Bundled Sage will give me more of a green color. And as you can see, I'm kind of getting that green color, but it's still quite minty here. So I'm like, well, that's not what I want at all. So then I heat set it because the paper, this is actual paper, it's not cardstock. So then I grabbed the peeled paint. I'm like, okay, the peeled paint is definitely a green color, so let's try this. So I grabbed the peeled paint. I'm like, okay, this is definitely getting closer to what I want. And you have to remember, distress inks are transparent, so you're just layering more and more color on top. So I'm like, all right, well, that's definitely closer to the color that I wanted, a lot closer. So then I'm like, all right, now to get my antique look, I need to add brown. So I didn't want a really dark brown because this is a very light colored green. So I grabbed the brushed corduroy and started adding it. But I didn't want it all over. I just wanted around the edge. So I start with the bottom and I start going around the edges of the bottom. And then I decided, well, I want to bring it all the way around. So then I start going around. Here in a second I will. I start going all the way around. There you go. So now I'm going all the way around. But that's not exactly what I wanted it to look like. The blending brushes look very soft. So then I grab my mini ink blending tool and I start going around the edges with that. Because I always feel like when I'm distressing the edges, I want a more harsh look or a darker look. And the mini ink blending tools will give you that, where the brushes, not so much. So that's why I grabbed that tool. And that's how I'm going to finish it up, is using the mini ink blending tool and keep going around until I get the look that I wanted with it. And that'll just take a second more or so. All right, just clean up my area, and that's what I wanted it to look like. Then I got some pieces here. I got another piece from the Simon Says Stamp Word Mix 1 set. And then we're going to spray it with the DIY shimmer spray. And I just make that with Perfect Pearls and some water. I mounted it on a black piece, the 1/8 inch border all the way around. I'm going to put that on the front, and that finishes off the front of the card. And then I had another scrap from that 12 by 12 paper. Well, I've got lots of scraps from it. We're going to add that to the inside. And then I got the You Matter again, and I'd cut that out with my scanning cut. That was part of the other card. I had to use this to make the pattern to cut the other one with the embossed set from the card that I just did before this. So this was a piece from that whole set. So I decided to use it on this card, but I wanted it to match this card. I didn't, and the white just blends in with the inside. So I decided to use some distress inks in the same colors to make this match the card. So now I'm laying it out here, and I'm like, okay, for one, this strip is a little too wide, so off camera I cut that down a little bit. And then we're going to layer this all up on the inside. So as you can see, this is now a little bit not as wide. So this doesn't cover up so much the happy birthday. And then I'm just going to glue this straight down. But yeah, what I was saying about the scan and cut is I cut this piece out to make a pattern to cut the U out, the black U in the card before this. And then I stamped the embossed sentiment in copper for the card before this. It's kind of a whole thing. I'd have to do a video on it probably for it to make sense. But because the scan and cut was not picking up the copper on the black cardstock for me to get the die cut U for the other card before this. All right, now we're going to do die cutting embellishments. And I chose a button die for this. I'll show you here in a minute. But you could do bows, you could do hearts, you could do all kinds of things to embellish your cards, but I did buttons. So I could give an old die some love that it hasn't received in a very long time. All right, so I'm going to show you the papers that I used for the buttons. I've got Woodland Walk from Craft Perfect, blah. And this came in a tonic craft kit for me, but you can buy these pads separately. Then I've got the Rainbow Fever pad. I showed you what papers that I'm using from that. And then this is from a very old Creative Memories storybox set called Paradise. And some of you may remember those old storybox sets. And then this is the die that I'm going to use. Buttons number 5 from Sizzix. All right. So here's my card base. And I'm going to take some DCVW Crafty Stack. This is an old 12 by 12 paper pack. You're going to be seeing, well, you've already seen quite a few old 12 by 12 paper packs. So I cut that down to a card panel size, and then I cut it in half diagonally, and then we will be making 2 cards with this that are going to be very similar. And this is where I made a terrible mistake. Well, it wasn't that terrible, but it was a mistake. So I glued this down to my card base, and then I've got a trim piece that I'm going to pull in just a second here. This piece that I wanted to put diagonally on that card panel, and I should have glued it down before I put it on my card base. So to fix this, I'm going to mark the edges with a T-square ruler. First I thought I could just freehand it, and then I realized that really wasn't going to work. So I put a piece of tape on this edge piece, trim piece, whatever you want to call it, and marked the edges with my T-square ruler. And I'm just going to show you marking this one edge, but I marked all of the edges. These 2 edges, and then I laid down the other one on the other panel and marked it too, and then I trimmed it off. All right, so then I got these buttons here, and these ones are just the pattern paper cut out. There's nothing stacked behind them, but the buttons you will see later that I'm going to put on these cards, they have, I think it was 3 pieces of 80-pound white cardstock stacked behind them so that they look dimensional. And this sentiment I cut out on my Cricut with a font that I have downloaded on my computer. I didn't write the font down though, so sorry. These buttons here, they have, I believe it was 3 pieces of 80-pound cardstock stacked behind them. That way that they look dimensional and look more like buttons. So then I'm just laying them out how I want to glue them on, and then we're going to glue them on. So as you can see, all the small little patterns on the buttons to make them all look different. And the small patterns with the big patterns of the pattern papers that are cut in the triangle pieces, they all just kind of, I mean, you would think it would look really busy, but it doesn't, because all the small patterns from a distance, they all look like kind of like solids almost. So it works, because my husband came down and he's like, you're gonna put all those patterns on that pattern paper. It's gonna look crazy. And no, it doesn't. So I think it looks good together, but you let me know what you think. All right, so then these ones here, these are also just the pattern paper. They don't have anything stacked behind them. So I thought I would, because I usually do the insides of my cards. I wasn't sure what to stamp on the inside. So I didn't stamp on the inside. I just put these buttons. That way I can put whatever I want on the inside when I decide to give these cards away. Because I really wasn't sure. I don't have a stamp set that like has sewing themed sentiments or anything. That's why I had to do the think so much with my Cricut. But anyway, so I'm just going to glue these in. Now the one on the left, I deviated from what I originally had laid out, and I didn't like it after I did it. So I went with the same, what I had originally planned out on the one on the right. Anyways, so here's the finished card. And then we got the final card pictures again. And I'm going to show both of the finished cards, even though, I mean, they're similar, but they're not exactly the same. And there's card number 2. And the inside. And then we're going to move on to 4. And this is layering using a card sketch. And I picked a really simple card sketch because I know not everybody uses card sketches, and I just kind of wanted to show a very simple card sketch. So I'm using the Freshly Made Card Sketches, and this is number 430. So I'm going to start off by stamping my sentiment and die cutting it, getting things all prepared before we do the card sketch. So I'm using a Happy Birthday sentiment, and this is from the, I believe it was Altenew Candlelight stamp set. And I'm going to heat emboss it with a Wow opaque bright white embossing powder. And then I'm using a banner die from Spellbinder's Vintage Banners die set, and I'm just not going to use those little flags on the end because it makes it kind of a huge sentiment, and I really didn't want to deal with that, to be honest. All right, then we're going to stamp the inside, and I'm using the same Candlelight stamp set. And then because the little image I wanted to stamp on the inside was from a foam stamp set, I had to flip my door around and stamp it separately. And this is from the Moonflower stamp set by Spellbinders. Then I took some pattern paper, and this is from what pack is this from? This is from the Paper Studio Tattered and Worn. And again, it's probably very, very old pattern paper set. And I took the Honeybee double stitched diamond honey cuts and cut a diamond out of it. And I probably didn't need to do that, but I can use the diamond on another card. And then I took that red paper is also from the same Tattered and Worn pattern paper, and I cut a diamond out of it and used it on some foam. And we're going to pop that up here in a minute. And we're just taking some score tape and lining the diamond in the middle with that so we can attach our craft foam to it. And this is 1/8 inch score tape. It just happened to be what I decided to grab. You could definitely use larger if you wish. I'm just going to attach my little diamond there. And then that flower is still from the Moonflower stamp set by Spellbinders, and I Copic colored it off screen. You can get the colors off of my blog post. And I'm just going to pop our little Happy Birthday banner up on some foam tape. And that red liner can be a pain sometimes, but I do find using a craft pick works a lot better than not using a craft pick. We're just going to glue our flower down flat. And to finish it off, I'm going to use some Nuvo Aqua Shimmer Pen and Glitter Gloss over just the flower. And then I'm going to use Nuvo Crystal Drops in Ebony Black to finish off the card. And just a couple of them. And then usually I warm my crystal drops or my Nuvo drops up, but I didn't this time, so then I'm just going to whack them flat. And that finishes off that card. Very simple. And here's our finished card pictures. Then we're going to move on to the last and final technique. And this is selective die cutting with the scan and cut. And you can do something like this with your shape dies. I just don't have a whole lot of shape dies because I do have electronic cutting machines. So I kind of feel like shape dies are a waste for me because I can cut any shape I want with an electronic cutting machine. So I thought it would be fun to show how to do something like this with the scan and cut. So I'm going to go to the scan and cut and show you how I did this. All right, I have a 12 by 12 piece of black and white pattern paper here that I am going to scan and put into Canvas Workspace so I can work with it. I'm going to choose Scan, and I'm going to go over here to Transfer to Canvas Workspace. I'm going to load my mat. Then we're going to click Start. And it is scanning my piece of paper. All right, so it is transferred to Canvas Workspace. We're going to go to the computer and work with it. All right, so we are in Canvas Workspace, and we're going to go up to File, and then Import from your cutting machine and scanned image. It's going to take a minute. All right, so let's zoom in just a little bit here. So since we are doing a selective die cut type technique, I'm just going to get me some shapes here. So I thought it might be fun. Let's try some different shapes. Let's see here. Maybe let's do, I don't have any scallop dies. Let's try a scallop. My metal die collection as far as shapes is pretty limited because I do have electronic cutting machines. So let's try some dies. Let's see. Let's do 4 inches. Where do we want to put this? Maybe do the bird. Yeah, that's not going to be big enough. We'll get this flower down here with that one. Then, whoops. Let's maybe do a rounded one. And we'll do this one at 4 by 5 1/4. Let's see here. Let's try to get all the bird and some of that flower. Maybe some of the one on the top too. Like that. I don't know if I like how round that corner is though. Let's delete that and do this one. And let's do 5 1/4 this way maybe. And 4. Let's try that. Yeah, I think I like that better. Oh, like that. And then let's see here. I would like to get that flower. Let's see, what shape do we want to use for that? Maybe be kind of fun. Let's see what we can do with this one. Let's do the height at 5 1/4. Maintain whoops. What? Ah. Delete. Let's try this again. Here. 5.25. Whoops. 5. All right. Let's see if we can get it on here. I don't like how much is being cut off on that one. Let's try this shape maybe. Maybe something like right there. Let's try to find a horizontal shape for that one. And I am not guaranteeing I'm making all of these cards. I just want to get the most out of this piece of paper. So let's see here. Maybe like that shape. See what we can do with this guy. Let's do 4.25, that one. That might be fun. You get most of the flower in there. I'd like to do something with that maybe. See what we can do. Oh, that might be a fun one. Let's do that. Let's kind of rotate it a little bit so it kind of goes with the shape of the flower. Like that. I think that's about it, because that's really only a partial one. That's the stem to that one. I don't know what I would do with that. So, yeah. All right, so then we are going to go to File and transfer FCM file via the internet. Now, if you don't have your machine connected to the internet, then you might have to do it via the USB cable or export the FCM file this way and put it on a USB stick and put it into your machine that way. But I'm going to do mine via the internet. Oh, that's fine. So it's saying that the image data will not be exported or transferred with the cut data. So that just means that the black and white image here will not be exported, and that's fine because you leave the paper on the mat loaded in the machine. Do not unload the mat. Just leave it that way. And I didn't mention that at the beginning of the video. You should leave the machine loaded, or the mat loaded in the machine, and that's fine. I just want these shapes that I put on here transferred, because my mat is still loaded and everything's going to cut exactly the way I see it on the machine here. All right, now we are back to the machine. We are going to click here and go retrieve data. We're going to retrieve data from Canvas Workspace. So there are all the little shapes that I put on in Canvas. We're going to click OK. We're going to choose Cut. And then we're going to choose Start. I'm going to let this cut out, and then we're going to go back to my craft desk and work with these pieces. right, here is our perfectly cut out shapes, just how we planned them out in the Canvas software. And I love how they turned out. I'm really having a lot of fun with the scan and cut. All right, so I'm just going to take a gel pen here. This is a Sakura Stardust glitter pen, actually. And I'm just going to fill in some of the little buds on this shape, or the flower. And I'm not going to show you all of the coloring that I did, but on each one of these shapes, I decided to pick one thing or or parts of the image to highlight with these gel pens. I'm just going to show you a couple little highlights of two of the images, like this one and then a flower from the next one. And then I'm just going to flash the each card and show the sparkle and shine for each card. I'm not going to show the, oh, here we go. Here is the sparkle on this one. But as I was saying, I'm not going to show the putting these cards together. This video is already quite long, and I very, very simply put these together. Very, very simply. But I just thought it would be fun to just kind of highlight these black and white images with a little bit of color, basically. So with this one, I just decided to outline the flower and then color in the center stamen with it, and I'm just going to show part of this one, basically, because it took a little while to do the whole flower. This one is with like an orange glitter gel pen, I guess. And it's kind of a sketched flower look, so I tried to kind of keep with the sketched lines. And I'm really glad to hear that everybody is enjoying this second camera view. It has been fun to play around with, and I'm glad that everybody is enjoying it. It definitely does provide a nice view where you can see what I'm doing instead of my hand being in the way the whole time. Just going to finish up a little bit more of this. And then here is the finished part, all sparkly and shiny. Those pens are really gorgeous. All right, so here is the finished purple one. I just matted it on some black cardstock and then matted the whole piece on a scrap piece of pattern paper. I have no idea even where any of these pattern papers came from. They were just in my scrap bin, so it was nice to use up some scraps. Here's the one with the bird and the flower. I decided to color his chest red and the flower orange. And then here is the one that we did with the octagon, and I colored that one yellow, and I thought that it was nice to add a little blue strip down the side. And here is the teardrop shaped one, and sorry my camera's out of focus there. There we go. And I just colored the one little flower on that one. And here's the final look at all 5 cards while I'm running through this and the final photo pictures. I hope that you enjoyed the project today, the collab. And don't forget that Renee's link will be in the description box below. I will also link to a video that she did at Christmas time where she did an amazing selective die cut card where she had a candle scene and she die cut different pieces of pattern paper and put them all together in this candle scene. It was absolutely amazing. It's way better than my selective die cutting here, and I hope that you check that out as well. And as always, have a great day.